Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of Comic Book Historians. Today we are focusing on Julius Schwartz and what he brought to DC Comics and comic books in general as one of the key 20th century comic book historical figures in part 1 of 2 of a series. To understand Julius Schwartz, we must go farther back to examine his science fiction idol, Hugo Gernsback. Hugo Gernsback is thought to have created the first pulp magazines purely devoted to science fiction in 1926 called Amazing Stories, and another one called Science Wonder Stories. To help elaborate on his vision, he discovered architect Frank R. Paul for his cover and interior illustrations. There were many Golden Age comic artists who were inspired by these images, notably Jerry Siegel and Jack Kirby, Mort Weisinger, and Julius Schwartz. Amazing Stories printed full addresses of the fans who wrote letters to the editor, and these fans would then mail and write to each other. As these fans are able to contact each other and start fan magazines, in other words fanzines, 3 notable fanboys are Julius Schwartz, Mort Weisinger, and Forrest Ackerman, who wrote their fanzine The Time Traveler in 1932. This meeting of the minds over science fiction would then establish what they, especially Julius Schwartz, would later bring to comics. In the meantime, Schwartz and Weisinger represented pulp writers from 1934 to 1944, and during this time, Schwartz organized the first World Science Fiction Convention in 1939. In 1944, he became editor of All American Comics, which was purchased by DC Comics, at which point he was an editor at National, or in other words, DC Comics. He would then reinvigorate these very same characters using science fiction in the later 1950s. Schwartz excelled at writing comics of a science fiction nature. When EC Comics printed science fiction, Schwartz pushed the science fiction genre and edited these 2 science fiction comics dated 1950 and 1951 respectively. Schwartz would pick and choose from these early science fiction concepts as he created and plotted characters and stories as editor. To get a sense of the environment in which Schwartz would plot or create characters, it's important to understand some of the moving parts. Superman TV show was a hit, and Mort Weisinger put Otto Binder to work after National had Fawcett stop using the Shazam character in 1954. Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, number 1, 1954 by Binder and Swan, was a major success, and with those Shazam superhero concepts, with Kurt Swan's clean look, that started some momentum for a Silver Age look at DC, which no one else was doing at the time. However, its success would be overshadowed by the dawn of the superhero Silver Age, which started with Showcase 4 in 1956. It's all a gradient, so isolating one event may be an oversimplification. However, Julius Schwartz, a man of science fiction, pushes the science fiction event as a starter for superheroes, putting together Robert Kanigher and Carmine Infantino to come up with a great design and story to create superheroes from bizarre science fiction events, which was interesting enough for readers to buy issues that thrive under the Comics Code. At this point, because of the Restrictive Comics Code, it's hard to find the proper genre that could actually do well. However, this science fiction superhero concept proved to be much more than fruitful. If you remember from the 8 Ages of Comic Book episode, around 1947, 1948, superheroes were starting to die out in favor of other genres like romance, crime, and horror. Unfortunately, the Comics Code made it kinda hard to throw in some of the more risque stuff that would sell under those genres. So, back to superheroes. But the secret ingredient? How do you make them interesting again? Introduce science fiction. Merge the genres. Create a whole new brand of superhero. That is Julius Schwartz's genius. And we take that for granted today. Although there was a golden age flash for All American Comics, powers from science fiction were a major hallmark of the Silver Age of superheroes, and lightning, mixed with chemicals, was likely much more plausible than hard water inhalation, which was in the 1940 storyline. Carmine Infantino has said that in 1956, Julius Schwartz, editor at DC, generated the Silver Age Flash's name Barry Allen from the first and last names of talk show hosts Barry Gray and Steve Allen. Super beings have been depicted as far back as early mythology. Mercury is very special because he seems to be a synthesis of super without being all-powerful, an interesting Roman god with limits. He is present in comics 1910 Little Nemo by Winsor McKay, 1940 Flash by Sheldon Moldoff, 1941 Mercury by Jack Kirby, and 1956 Flash by Carmine Infantino and others. There's a symbolism with this as a messenger of great and more powerful things to come that continues to fascinate humans. Well, that is certainly the case case here because this fleet-footed superhero under Julius Schwartz in Showcase 4 1956 emerged with an all-new Flash based on a normal guy given powers, again under a random science fiction event. And that formula, spearheaded by Julius Schwartz, proved financially successful, and suddenly the comic book industry knew how to create more new characters under that same context. This sci-fi superhero revival would also be called the Silver Age. Julius Schwartz would put the science fiction angle of Flash to whole new heights, like in Flash 123 1961, when he, Gardner Fox, and Carmine Infantino introduced the idea of a multiverse through an Earth 2, where there were other vibratory frequencies of other parallel universes that could be traveled through the correct science quantum mechanical mechanisms. Although Flash was a prototype by Schwartz that broke the mold for the popular sci-fi superhero comic formula, he also applied that formula to the Golden Age Green Lantern by introducing concepts from the Lensman Pulp series, which started in 1934 by Edward Smith, Ph.D., and took comic book science fiction to a whole other level. This 1930s story was about a galactic patrol with each member worthy of a lens attached to their hand, capable of transmitting energy and translating interstellar languages. Their mission was to defend civilization, which sounds like the Green Lantern Corps. In 1959, Julius Schwartz created the new Green Lantern and his Green Lantern Corps as a sci-fi hero named Hal Jordan, and with his ring and willpower act as part of a galactic patrol, or corps, overseen by the Guardians of the Universe. So get Golden Age Green Lantern, check. Insert Gray Lensman, check. Have writer and artist figure out the rest, check. In 1962, editor Julius Schwartz, writer John Broome, and inker Joe Jella made this fun 1962 crossover that combined Green Lantern and Flash. Gil Kane penciled Green Lantern and Carmine Infantino penciled the Flash. This was their first pairing outside of the JLA, still only 12 cents. And this kind of exciting science fiction overlap of various characters would be emulated by the Marvel Universe in the 60s, as well as the modern Flash TV show. So that ends part 1 of 2 of our Julius Schwartz series. Stay tuned for part 2, where we go beyond Flash and Green Lantern into Hawkman, Atom Strange, Justice League, Superman, Batman, and beyond toward the end of his career at DC Comics. Stay tuned. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button. We got more to say in other videos. Also check out our podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Play. We also have constant updates on Twitter and Instagram, or continue the conversation in our Facebook group. Cheers.